It is the Practical Prayer Podcast pre-show on New Thought Media Network. I am Bill Marchiony over in Philadelphia, and just a stone's throw across the river and down through the woods or whatever is Carol, who's over there.
Throwing a stone.
Over there. There you go. Throwing stones. And first off, for the people who are joining us either live or the recording on the pre-show, today is Veterans Day, which is nice, and thank you for your service for all those who have taken part in that. And also today is 11/11. November 11th, 1111, which I always love because it's a reminder that there is only one. And they had a discussion about that on our morning meditation today, and the observation is it doesn't mean anything. You know, we're on planet Earth, and it's basically a rotisserie that's turning around in front of the sun. It goes around every 365 or so days. And the way that we label it means that today comes up as 1111. So we're celebrating our label rather than something intrinsic to today. And still, there's something about it.
I was trying to figure out if it was something about it. I just kind of bumped into it last night when I was doing what I do for the next day. And I said, oh, look at that. Okay. I guess that's a synchronicity. So I was waiting for something to come up, like, so what do I do now?
Yep.
Nothing
And
nothing
it's one of those things like Friday the 13th. That happens a few times a year, and it either means something or it doesn't. It's the whole idea of is there correlation or causation. Like when there's a full moon on a Saturday night, the emergency rooms are much busier than normal, but you don't know if it's the full moon causing that or if it's people responding to the full moon saying, oh, that's my excuse, and they're going to go out and do stupid stuff. So you don't know.
I don't know. I looked and I said, okay, is this really a deep thing on the calendar? Because, there is 10-10 and 12-12, but these are all ones in a row. I got tired.
Yep.
Like nothing particularly wonderful. I can't say that. Things are happening good in my life, but they were happening the day before, and, it's going to keep on happening.
And it's possible that the people who received their God call today noticed that it was acknowledging that today is 1111 and that the God call came in at 11:11 a.m. Eastern Time, which also doesn't mean anything, but for me it was just fun.
That's fun. Well, to me, that's what the whole thing is about, to try to have fun as often as you can because, life is so real. Just try to have fun when you can.
There you go. And just a reminder that if you have a question, comment, or prayer request, or even a suggestion, you can put it into the comments on your social media if you're watching us live. If you are watching the recording, you can go to bethelight.com, be-the-light.com, and there's a section for the Practical Prayer Podcast there. And you can put in the same suggestion there, and we will respond to it from there. And I am looking forward to today's episode. I mean, I always look forward to the episodes, but you keep on coming up with topics. This is topic number 174 in an ongoing series of Practical Prayer podcast topics, and they keep on being fun.
Well, let me say this about that. I don't come up with these. This is my life. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Like stuff keeps happening, and I'll have a question, and I say, okay, well, this is what we're going to talk about, or whatever, and I'll be maybe walking down the hall and say, what are we going to talk about?
There you
This is
go.
what we're going to talk about. Yeah.
Okay. Well, something comes up in Scripture or reading Emmett Fox or Ernest Holmes or Charles Fillmore, and then it happens to be Monday afternoon. You can say, let's talk to Bill about that and see if he agrees or disagrees or provides contrast, or we just get into some feisty discussion where Bill is inadvertently arguing with Neville.
I will certainly discuss that with them.
Let's go ahead and start the podcast episode, and then we can do the grand reveal to the people who are on New Thought Media Network about exactly what it is that we're going to talk about.
Okay.
A practical prayer is a prayer that works.
These discussions between Reverend Bill Marchiony and Carol Lawrence dive into the details of how it works and how to work it.
Reverend Bill is a New Thought minister and the author of Practical Prayer for Real Results.
Your new life begins with a new thought.
Carol Lawrence is on a spiritual quest, finding the New Thought teaching after decades on the pulpit in 3 different traditional denominations.
I've got some questions.
Together, they're exploring the philosophy and activities that come together from many of the world's religions to create the practical spirituality that is New Thought.
Welcome to the Practical Prayer Podcast. I'm Carol, here with Reverend Dr. Bill Marchiony, and I'm looking forward to this one.
I am too. You came up with a great topic of conversation, and without letting the air out of the tires, I'm going to say that it's a great outline for a topic.
Okay. Right.
Because you want to talk about outlining.
I want to talk about outlining, and this is how I got to it.
Okay.
So, I was having a conversation with Neville. And, Neville talks about in the prayer process of prayer, you like do the vision and you make it really plain and, all of that out there. Okay. And then the Bible says in Habakkuk 2:2, write the vision, make it plain, and it says blah, blah, blah. But this blah, blah after that doesn't contradict in any way the beginning that says write the vision, make it plain. So
Okay.
you do that. And so that works for me because I am a detailed person, so I can get in there, I can write, Then here comes Emmett Fox, who says, don't outline, just say what you want, just whatever. So what is there's a distance or a little foggy area in there where it's, you create the vision, you write the vision, make it plain, I guess, and you leave it alone, but you don't tell God how to get to it. There's a fine line, I think, in the outlining or the do not outline piece. It's probably in the Bible somewhere, do not outline, but I didn't see it. So
I don't think it's actually written out that way in the Bible. However, when we're talking about outlining, that is when we are identifying exactly how something that we are desiring in our life can come about. And as far as I'm concerned, it's perfectly okay if that's the way that it comes about. I will illustrate the challenge and the difficulty with outlining with a simple story. So let us suppose that there is a person who is up for a job, and the job pays $100,000 a year, and it's in a not too far away place, and it seems like the sort of thing that they'd be particularly suited for, and the job candidate really, really wants the job. Outlining is when you say, I want that job, and all of the success metrics and desire goes into having that particular job. Simultaneously, there's a person around the corner with a job that pays $125,000 a year that's easier to do with a better group of people that's going to be more fun and really, really, really fit the skill set of the person who's looking to get the job, and in many ways is going to be a much richer and more uplifting and satisfying and long-term engagement than the one that I described, the first one. Now, there's nothing wrong with that first job. There's nothing necessarily wrong with that first job. If we go by the outline, then we're going to have to go past that $125,000 a year job to get to the $100,000 a year job, because that's the one we said we wanted. The outline is, I want to have my success and my joy and my prosperity and the rest of it, and it's got to be that way. And the other one is, I'm going to have all of this good, and I'm open to it being what I've described or something better. I'm going to stop talking for a while now and let you talk.
I'm processing it. It makes sense, but it kind of goes back and forth a little bit because when you write the vision, or when you're putting the vision together in your head and you kind of see it, but you don't really know how you're going to get there. So if you say, I want to do it this way, that's outlining.
Well, it's not
But-
that I want to do it this way. I want the universe to do it that way. I want the infinite to respond and the creative law that creates everything to do it like this.
Oh, if you want to put it like that, that's like, don't boss the universe around, just
Well,
show
okay.
up with your idea, right?
Yeah, there's a shorthand term for bossing the universe around and trying to get your way, which
What is
is
it?
outlining.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. I'm looking at hindsight now, and I'm seeing a couple of times where something happened and I didn't outline it. I just said I wanted it to happen. I didn't know, on purpose. I didn't not outline on purpose, because I think if I was to, I would probably do it, right? It just didn't occur to me to put the how-tos in place. I just kind of threw it out there, and the next thing I know, bang. And I thought, how did that happen? Look at that. Oh my God. And so I wanted to be in the company of a group of people. And I had no clue how to do it, how it was going to happen. I just said, this is one of the things that I want to do. And I was talking to somebody on the phone, and they were going, blah, blah, blah. And I just put it away. Next thing I know, I got a call inviting me to the exact event that I thought was just in my imagination, right? It gets better, man.
The one with all those people, they're going to be there anyway, and they want you
They're
to
gonna-
come
wait.
hang out with them.
They wanted me to come out and hang out with them. And I'm thinking, no.
No.
You're kidding. So I laughed, right? So I had a particular number of people in my mind when I said it. The number was insignificant. It's just a number I had off the top of my head because it was just that. And so when I'm at the event, okay, so I started counting, right?
Of course.
To see, of course. And, I said, just after it was over, I said, Spirit, you came up a little short, right? Thanks for doing this, but you came up a little short. In 3 days, I'd say, or less, I got another invitation. The number was way bigger, that offset the first one. So it was like you double the first one, this one exceeds that. I said, okay, all right, I guess you got it, right?
Yep.
I guess you got it, Spirit. Okay, you're cool, babe. And so I didn't outline. I didn't know how. If I knew how, I probably would have tried it, but I didn't know how. I just put it out.
When you first
I'm just
said
being
it,
honest.
yeah, that is. When you first said that you wanted to be involved in this group and doing and being involved in this event, did you have an idea of how that might come about, or was this just something that you were open to and interested in and wanted to and were inviting?
The second, I had absolutely no idea how to make it happen in my wildest imagination. I just
Okay.
said, this is what it was like something I saw, and I said, oh, that's what I want to do. That's it. That was like one of the things.
Mm-hmm.
And so I figured, yeah. I can't even tell you that I thought it was going to happen one day. It's just, this is what I want to do. And wow, this would be really nice. One of those kind of fantasy out there things you think about.
Mm-hmm.
And let me say this. So in case there's somebody out there who's listening with the imposter syndrome,
Which is everybody.
which is everybody, I thought, well, I'm not even qualified. What would I have to do? That would be my outline piece. My first part of the outline is try to figure out, well, what do I have to do to qualify to do
Right. Where do I
this?
get the merit badges so that I can be in
Yes.
in
Yes.
that ceremony? Yep.
So that's that's the whole honesty piece of it. I'm telling like the whole truth. I kind of daydreamed it and then said, oh, that would be nice. It seemed like, you know, if I told somebody, they say, oh yeah, well, that's you. But I didn't.
Because you didn't necessarily think it was you, but you did the two really important parts of that, which is you didn't try and figure out how you can maneuver yourself to get into that group, because just from a practical standpoint, when you do that, a colleague of mine used to refer to it as circle the wagons. Okay, when an outsider comes in, like a consultant or somebody with a new opinion, the people who are there circle the wagons and do everything that they can to keep the inward-facing stuff inward and keep the other person out. You weren't doing that. You didn't. You had no idea of engaging, of approaching. You weren't. You didn't come. You weren't headed in their direction, so there was nothing to defend against. So there was no energy pushing against you. That was the first piece of it. You didn't figure out, here's how I'm going to make this happen. And the second thing is, you were okay with it happening however it did. You didn't have any resistance. You said, well, this would be wonderful to happen. And you didn't follow that up with, and it's not possible. I know that it can't happen because I'm unworthy and they won't want me and all the rest of it. You just, I want this. That's okay. And then you stopped without putting any negative energy on there. Well, that is the recipe for activating that infinite creative law, is to have an idea, put some emotion behind it, and get rid of the doubt.
You know what? You're right. I think you could also say, just don't think about it anymore. Because the more you think about it, the more stuff comes in that you can imagine that this can't, either to fix it, to make it happen, or think about how it couldn't possibly happen. Because that's what has happened to me in the past. Now, I'm really, I'll be honest, I'm really not big on this is what I want to happen and this is what I want to see. I just usually don't get that far. But this time I did. And actually, I was just talking to a friend on the phone, and I just kind of blurted out, well, this, and they said, well, this, what would you think? And I described it, and it was a conversation that lasted all of like 3 minutes maybe. And then we were on to the next thing. And when the call came, I thought, oh, okay. But it wasn't until I actually saw the Zoom, right? I'm sitting there and I said, look at that. It was like something I had seen before. And I'm like, how the heck did this happen? I just, at that point, all you can do is laugh and then think about how unqualified you are to be where you already are. So there's no sense in holding on to that.
Yeah.
You're like, you're here.
May I ask you a question in hindsight?
Sure.
When you went and participated in this event, did you actually have something valuable to add? Were you an important contributor?
Yeah, that's the other thing. Yes.
So you didn't necessarily think you had it beforehand, but somebody did.
No, even when they asked me if I would do it, the first thing I thought of was, I don't do that. I don't do that. But I tell you what, though, I've learned over the years, I am not a fool. If there's an opportunity, show up. Just show up. If you mess it up, you won't get another one.
That's right.
But if you,
okay, well, that didn't work. Next.
Right, yeah. So I'm pretty cool with that. But I absolutely felt totally unqualified, out of place, even with the notion, but there I was. Okay. And I said, all right.
I'm going to do it. And it turned out that it was a good thing.
Well, I'll tell you what, this is also in hindsight. This is not the first time I've said to God, okay, let's go. Let's do this. Let's go. Let's go. And sometimes I would even think God has said, where does this girl have me going now? Like, why does she keep doing this stuff? And then we just have fun.
Well, interestingly, God's going to be at the meeting whether you go or not. Well, that's the nature of infinite. So if it's entertaining, it can happen. And it's all based on what it is that we're looking to create in our lives. Let's take a quick break and continue talking about outlining or not. Are you ready to get results? Now, that's not a rhetorical question. Are you ready to get results? RUR2GR. That's actually the abbreviation for the steps in a practical prayer. Recognition, unification, realization, gratitude, and release, with a couple of extra steps in there in case some doubt creeps in along the way. RUR2GR. This class is about the prayer technique that's common to all of the spiritual practices and religions in the most effective prayers that they have. And by effective, I mean that the prayer works. It actually creates a change in the experience of the person doing the prayer. It gets a result. We're going to begin with theory, and then we're going to take it into practice. By the end of the class, you will have your very own practical prayer that will help create transformation in your life.
Welcome back to the Practical Prayer Podcast. I'm Carol with Reverend Dr. Bill Marchiony.
Having a conversation about outlining, which is where we get the idea that we can tell the infinite how to do its job.
Yeah.
And sometimes it works. Sometimes we come up with the idea of how this ought to work, and we apply some muscle and some mind sweat, and we move some things around, and it works. And that lulls our ego into the sense of thinking that it's in control. And our egos love that. We love, especially those of us who are carrying a control freak card, as Carol used to, and so did I. When we think that we're in control and the way things work out reinforces, oh, this worked for me, we tend to think that's the best way to do it. And in fact, the times that we're trying to maneuver things and we make it work, we're still partnering with an infinite creative power. But what happens is when I say this is what I want and this is how I want it to show up and this is the idea for how it can come about, what I'm actually doing is limiting that infinite creative power. Because infinite means unlimited. There is no limit to the variety of ways that this goodness can come about. If I'm attached to it happening, which is just fine, and I'm also attached to it happening in a particular way, then it might not be possible for it to happen in that particular way. There might be somebody else who's in the queue for getting what it is that I think I want, in which case it's going to look like a failure for me, whereas otherwise it could look like a success for me. It's just not the way I thought it was going to look to begin with. Mm-hmm. So being unattached to how and being unattached to the specifics of the outcome turn out to be very, very powerful, because that gives the infinite a lot of elbow room in our consciousness. When we try and figure it out, then the infinite is going to either do it this way or not do it that way, and the infinite might be doing it a different way. It's just going to look like it's not responding to us.
So here's my question on that. I agree 100%. But here's my question.
All right.
You leave it up to the infinite, but we're co-creators. So what is our part in this? Just to dream it up? I mean, I thought we had to partner and do our part.
Absolutely.
So to speak.
Absolutely.
Okay.
So, we'll make it a real life story. So when I was in college, I got into radio, and I was in the broadcast business. And my first full-time job in radio was actually as a summer relief engineer at NBC. And the local radio station in New York, WNBC, had union engineers, and they needed people to cover for the summer. So I spent the entire summer of 1980 working for NBC. And among other things, my favorite morning show, which was Imus in the Morning, which was on that station at that point. So I got to participate a little bit behind the scenes. And what I really wanted to do was to be on a morning show myself. I wanted to do a comedy morning show. And I went and worked at other radio stations, and it wasn't the same, and it wasn't NBC, and it wasn't that level of excitement, and it wasn't a major market, and it was frustrating, and was working in small markets and stuff like that. And Labor Day weekend, 1984, my old boss had gotten this job a year earlier in Philadelphia, and he was the program director at an AM station in Philadelphia. They were playing oldies. That was his idea. And the morning show that he'd done, which was playing oldies and pretending like it was 1964, wasn't working. So they brought in a guy to do a comedy morning show because they wanted to make it be something different. And he called me like on Thursday or Friday going into the weekend and said, yeah, the things started last week, and the guy who we have, helping out on the show, it's not particularly working out. I'm not sure if he's liable to quit. So he says, don't keep your hopes up. I just wanted to see if you were interested. And I was underemployed at the time. And I spent the weekend intentionally not thinking about that. It's like, I am open to whatever's possible. And this was well before I got into this teaching. It's just that I knew what it was like to get wrapped around the axle thinking, this could happen and that could happen. This goes this way and this could go that way. So I just let go of it. Mm-hmm. I just let it go. And on Tuesday, I was getting ready to go to my evening job. And he called and he said, the job's open, you want it?
Oh, wow.
It's like, well, yeah. He says, well, can you be here in 2 hours? And I said, I live in North Jersey. It'd take me 2 hours to drive there. You want me to move? No, give me another couple hours to pack. And just like that, I was working on a major market morning show. And when I got to Philly, the guy who was doing the show, he loved doing ensemble stuff. And he found out that I could do comedy and I could do voices and I could do much more than what I was originally hired for. And it was an opportunity for me to blossom. I could not have figured that one out myself. So, and the lesson for me was let it go. I had set the intention. There's a new possibility coming along. I'm not going to try and micromanage it. I'm not going to wrestle it to the ground in my brain. Just leave it there, give it some room to grow, and magic and success happened. Now, that wasn't the end of the story, but that was me getting into a major market morning show.
So that's how it works.
Mm-hmm.
I probably can look back on other things, in the past that probably worked that way. But staying out of it is a tiny bit difficult.
It certainly can be.
But the other thing is, I've been setting the goal really, really high. kind of trying to trick myself out of participating because I can't. Do you know what I mean?
Yep.
I set it real high, and I did that a couple of times, and it just worked out. It just worked out. And sometimes I mentioned to you, and I don't know if you remember, it was really recently, about something that I was being asked to do, and I've been asked to do it a lot, and I don't want to do it, and I felt like I was obligated to do it, maybe, and I thought, okay, I think this is some across the street interpretation sneaking into my world here, where the word call is used a lot in ministry across the street. And I never did like that call because because it feels like you have no choice. So even if you don't like it, you have to do it kind of deal. And so I thought, I never liked this. So since I'm not across the street, why am I considering this? And And like it's like part of my heart was saying, yeah, and then and you posed a really interesting question. You said, can you not do this and still be who you are? Mm-hmm. I couldn't get that out of my head, because I said, yeah. So why you want to keep on doing it? I don't want to keep on doing it. So why are you doing it? It's just that thing. So I think the outlining part can be helpful in the not doing, but considering where you are right now, maybe, and what you should not be doing, like steps you shouldn't take. Does that make sense? Like,
a little bit. And there are actually two quotes from our esteemed leaders that come to mind. And the first one, which I've been thinking about for a little while, is from Ralph Waldo Emerson, who was one of the original New Thought guys. And he said, "Let us get our bloated nothingness out of the paths of the divine circuits." And that is a wonderful way of saying, get your ego, stop outlining, stop telling the infinite how it's going to work. The infinite knows how to connect this. So, let's stop messing with it and allow it to happen. And there is magic in that, because the circuit might work a different way than you had in mind, and that's okay. And then you change the subject and you're talking about the calling, and the contract that a minister has with the church is called a letter of call. And it's, I think, really easy to confuse that letter of call with a calling. Letter of call, it's, we're going to bring this minister in, and they're going to be our pastor, and they're going to shepherd us into this life of spiritual integrity and uplift, and yada, 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 yada. It's an employment contract. It's a job. And it comes with working with the board of trustees, which can turn it into much more of a job than it could be otherwise, because at the end of the day, it's the intersection of spirituality and commerce. I talk to business coaches a lot, and they say, okay, well, in order to be successful, you figure out what it is that you have to offer, you create your product, you create a funnel so that people can dip their toe in, and you can send them something free and then upsell them and get them into something else. And it's like, that doesn't work for ministry. With ministry, you take your best stuff, you give it away for free, and then ask people to make a donation to support you making another one of those great things. The calling, the actual calling, not the letter of call, but the calling itself is... And I'll quote Joel Goldsmith now, who was talking about becoming a practitioner and in practicing the presence and doing this work of spiritual healing and being a worker of light and truth. He said, if you can find anything else that will fulfill you, do it.
Of course.
If you find something else, go do that. The calling... Yeah, and you've had the calling. So there was a reason that you spent 35 years on the pulpit, even though you had to deal with boards at 3 different churches and the higher-ups in those organizations that wanted to control it from the top down.
Yes.
Okay, so you're a little watermelon seed getting squeezed in that. And still, you were doing it because you had a calling.
Okay.
You can't give me 35 years and just say, okay. It's like, there was something going on there, and it wasn't just because you needed something to get out of corporate America to do.
No. It was, yeah. I mean, yeah. I was doing what I felt like I was pulled and drawn to do. And when you do that, you take any of the crap that comes along with it, but you keep on doing it because you think you're right. So that's how I kind of define that.
And that's the opposite of outlining. It's like, I know that I am here to share my gifts, to be this presence, to be a light bearer and a way shower. And the way that it's presenting itself for me to do that now is pastoring this group of people in this particular community with this particular board of trustees, working with the finances and the volunteers and the attitudes and the proclivities and all the rest of the biases and the good and the bad that come along with that particular congregation. And we do that because that is the way that we can fulfill our calling for right now.
Yes. So there was one little piece in there that I had to be clear. I had no idea that was bringing me to here. But I knew that it had to be something other than where I was. It's like, come on. It cannot end this way. This cannot be all there is. Now, maybe there are a lot of people that feel that way, but nobody's going to fess up, right? Nobody's going to fess up to the fact that they're feeling really frustrated, uncomfortable with what God has called us to do. So,
I will.
Well, I mean,
what is the meaning of this?
Well,
I
what's the
demand to see the
meaning?
blessing in it.
Well, no, we would say, what's the meaning of this? But we wouldn't demand to see the blessing because we just are pawns in a sense. Just do what you're called to do. But, in the midnight hour, I'm thinking, come on, is there something? There's got to be, like, why do I have these ideas? And there was one idea that I had. It was in the late 90s because I had just finished seminary for about a year. And I just had this vision of something an idea that was not even happening. Like, we didn't have Google then. But I had this idea about what I imagined I would do after I retired. And so I suggested to God, I need to be able, because once I get such and such an age, I'm not going to be able to see to drive. I don't want to get on these airplanes, and I don't want to do this, but I don't want to just like do nothing. And I always believed that retirement would come before my energy ran out. So I'm thinking, right, because my mom was 96 and she was doing over a mile walk every day. I'm thinking, I got to have something. And really, and I knew what I do well, but I didn't have the picture, okay, but sort of. So I can tell you now, I swear to God, if I could do that, I am living that which I saw then.
Mm-hmm.
And it blows my mind completely. And it also makes from 11:11. I'm not real good at this, right? So I'm getting better every day, everybody. So it's not like I saw it and I'm like, woo, I know how to live my life. No. No, it's like, oh, look at that. This is exactly, and then a lot of pieces start fitting together. And I said, okay, from this point forward, I can go forward with a whole lot less stress because I kind of see how it works. But it doesn't mean that I'm, like the control freak card is there. I just have to keep reminding myself to just leave it. But I didn't outline anything because I didn't know what to outline. Like, I didn't know how to do it.
Yeah.
But it was being outlined for me. Is that a fair thing to say?
It was being presented to you. The opportunities were offered up, and you followed the path and got yourself to where you got to. Were there some things that you did along the way where your ego, your monkey mind, and your controllingness took you down a path that, in hindsight, might have been unnecessary? I'd guess, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, listen, I want to be clear, and I hope that every day I get better at understanding Mr. Goddard and all the rest of them. You see the vision and you know it. I would see things and kind of like really hope and dream, but have no clue how in the world, not even know whether it exists.
Mm-hmm.
Do you know what I mean? I didn't know that new thought existed. I knew that the kind of thinking I had didn't fit where I was, but I didn't know that there was actually a place in this lifetime where I would be able to. First thing you told me, you have to learn the language. Mm-hmm. So I said, fine, I know what lexicons are. I'll get a couple books. I'll learn how these things work. And, bang, I learned the language. And I thought, I knew this before. This fits. Oh, my God. I didn't outline it. It was outlined for me, I guess.
Yeah. Well, and it's one of the interesting things about New Thought is that there's nothing new. And so many of us have come to New Thought realizing, wait a second, I've believed large pieces of this for my entire life, but didn't have any language or concept or framework or certainly other people to talk to about it with. And then we find this, and we find that there are other people, there are songs, there are communities, there are books, there's a couple hundred years of history of this. And then we find out how connected it is with all of our other spiritual traditions, where the parts of the religion got added on top of the spiritual truth. I mean, the practical prayer is basically the same formula that Jesus said, here's how you pray, when he did the Lord's Prayer. So we have just done what he said and taken it up a notch and let the rest of the stuff that surrounded that go away. Because when we let go of our attachment to it fitting into a particular mold, then whatever it is that's being molded turns out to be the value rather than the shape that it takes.
And that's the beautiful part of it. And it explains faith just perfectly, because you don't have to see how it's going to happen. You can just rest in, if you can, like just rest in the idea that it will happen, you know. And so I'll say, look, if I live long enough, this is what's going to happen. I mean, if I live long enough, I won't be surprised. Now, I would like not to have to wait until I'm 90, God, okay? But, you know, I'm just overwhelmed, I think, at how much energy and frustration I allowed myself to experience on the journey from there to here.
You had something to learn. And perhaps the frustration that you felt is going to give you something to teach and share when you're talking about this with other people. I don't know. This is, as we say, above my pay grade.
No, I think you're spot on about that. I really do. You know, I really do. Because there was always that thing. I know I'm going somewhere. This cannot be it. Therefore, I can't rest in this. I need to go to San Francisco, but I have no clue if San Francisco really exists or how to get there. But I know it's out there somewhere.
Yep. There's the San Francisco for me, and I got to go find it because something told me I got to go do that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So then I look back and say, well, you probably could have got on the road sooner, couldn't you? But
And we can second guess ourselves like that till the cows come home, and it doesn't particularly help. One of the other things that is sometimes very clear to me is I'm working with a client and they're going through a dark night of the soul with, a real challenge because everything was going great and then it suddenly turned sideways and now everything is miserable and there's turmoil and whatever, and they make the mistake of saying, well, why is this happening? It's like, I'm not sure why this is happening, but it is possible that you're going to find yourself sitting in front of somebody else in the future who's in the same situation you're in now, and you'll be able to tell them that there's a light at the end of the tunnel. Because you're finding that light now. And nobody likes hearing that when they're in the tunnel.
yeah, you don't. And I'm saying, like, I've been in the tunnel a few times, quite a few times. But people don't learn from words. They learn from experience.
Yep.
And so sometimes just for me to say, I've been there, and I don't know where you're going, but I've been there, and you're not going to die in the wilderness. It feels like it, but you're not going to die. So just hang in there.
Yep.
Try not to explain everything because I can't explain it. The best I can do with any degree of confidence is say, you're probably not going to die here. So hang in for a minute.
Yep. Breathe out and carry on.
Yeah.
Let's take a break, and we will do a prayer after the break on the opposite of outlining.
Learn to put practical prayer to work in your life. The steps are simple to learn and let you begin to get real results to create the life of your dreams immediately. Reverend Bill Marchiony's widely acclaimed book, Practical Prayer for Real Results, gives you a clear summary of the New Thought principles behind practical prayer and the series of easy-to-understand steps found in the most effective prayers from religions and spiritual practices all over the world and throughout history. Practical prayer is not a replacement for your religion or practice. It's a technique to make the work you do in consciousness even more effective. The book includes 40 prayers on various topics that you can adapt as needed and use as your own. Practical Prayer for Real Results is available in paperback, Kindle, and audiobook on Amazon or at b-the-light.com. That's b-the-light.com.
Welcome back to the Practical Prayer Podcast. I'm Carol, here with Reverend Dr. Bill Marchiony, having an amazing discussion.
We started out a conversation about outlining, which is where we tell the infinite how something is going to happen. So we decide that we want to have some good in our life, and we say this is how the good is going to show up in my life, and then invite the infinite to basically color in inside of our outline. And it is my suggestion that when we think that we got to make the outline and only let the infinite fill in what we think ought to be filled in, we're providing huge limitations on what we believe is possible. Because when we do that, what we're saying implicitly is that we think it can only work this one way, and it has to work this one way, or it's not going to be what I want. And we are inadvertently discarding all of the other ways that that same degree of goodness can come about in our lives. This practical prayer is about the opposite of outlining and defining how the infinite is going to create something for us. It is a prayer of imagination, of openness, of allowing, and also to acknowledge that the good that we're looking for is this or something better. If I'm looking for a job that pays $60,000 a year, there's the possibility there's an $80,000 a year job right around the corner, and I don't want to rule that out. Mm-hmm. So in this prayer, and in any prayer, we can include the notion of this or something better. So what we want to do is be as specific as possible and as abstract as we can in explaining what it is that we want to have. So if I meet somebody and I decide that I want to be in a long-term, loving, committed relationship with her, then I'm limiting the universe because she might already be involved, or she might not be available, or there might be things that could happen in that relationship which go beyond anything that I've imagined so far, in which case all of the things that I've been dreaming about might not be available. However, all of those thoughts and ideas about the relationship that I want to have, those are still real. Those are still possible. So I can open up my imagination and say, I am looking to have a loving and committed and joyous and vibrant romantic relationship the way that I've been imagining, or something better. It can be this or something better. And that's the prayer. So we simply open our awareness to that infinite creative power. Infinite. As big as we can possibly imagine, and then bigger than that, and bigger than that. Infinite is unlimited. The good that we are seeking is available in ways that go so far beyond our limited thinking and even our limited imagination. But it's a creative law, and it's always responding. It's always saying yes. So as we set the intention for the good that we're seeking, and let go of our attachment to it being a specific way and say it can be this or something better, that infinite creative power is opening up and creating something new for us. That divine power and presence is always responding. So I know that as each one who is listening now is opening to that newness that they are desiring, to that experience that they are inviting, letting go of the details, letting go of the outline, letting go of the thought that there needs to be some control or specificity about how this is coming about. That infinite creative power, that one divine presence, that one love that has created everything, that creates everything, that continues to create everything, is now creating this newness. And perhaps it's in exactly the way that we would have done it if we were in charge. And perhaps it is something that is so far beyond the scope of our imagination that it catches us by surprise and flummoxes us. And after the good is in our lives, we say, I would never have seen that coming. That was something that's so far outside of my imagination that I would not have expected it. And now that it's here, I am so, so deeply grateful. And that's the experience that we get to have. That's what I'm inviting for each of us. And I'm grateful for the wonderful, gentle, loving, and uplifting way that it's unfolding. A different story for each of us. We're all setting a different intention. We're all opening to a different possibility. And still, that same divine love unfolding. That's what I'm calling upon. That's what I'm inviting. That's what I am knowing is happening now. And so with a deep feeling of gratitude for this good that's already underway and continues to unfold, I speak this word and I release it into the same creative law that's created everything. And I now invite it to create this goodness for each of us in our own way. And so I let it be. And so it is.
The Practical Prayer Podcast with Reverend Bill Marchiony and Carol Lawrence is a production of BeTheLight.com,
be-the-light.com,
where you can find more information about practical prayer for real results.
Our theme is by Music of Wisdom. You can learn about the spiritual community of New Thought Philadelphia with daily guided meditations,
Weekly celebrations of spirit
and Reverend Bill's classes in practical spirituality
at newthoughtphilly.org.
That was a fun and exciting Practical Prayer Podcast episode. Thank you so much for that.
I thought that was really good.
Yeah.
Very interesting.
I was reminded that sometimes my daughter likes to go get color by numbers, canvas artwork, and then paint. And that can be easy because you don't have to think too much about which shapes and which colors go where. And it's also possible to paint outside the lines. So you can actually use that as a framework and then notice when you're going with the outline and when you're not.
While you were saying that, I was thinking, okay, that's cool now. I got this. But during those years that I was pastoring, sometimes I thought, I'd say, God, well, it's got to be something more than this. And why did you give me this desire and this knowing, and all of this? And then it's nothing. And then there were some times I just said, it's probably going to be my next life because I don't see no way out of this. Or and it's not like it was, I don't want to make it sound like it was a terrible thing, but if you're boxed, if you're just boxed in, it's okay for people who feel comfortable in a box, but I didn't. And I thought, just maybe it's like I'll come back, so I'll just be okay here.
Okay. Are there any of those that are still sitting there where you're waiting for the thing that you're supposed to be getting that hasn't happened? Or is it all kind of showed up in a circuitous way?
Are there others that are on that path you're saying?
Is there stuff you're still waiting for?
Not really. I mean, whatever I'm waiting for, I know I can almost see it, and I don't worry about it, right? Because I'm in a space now where there's all good. It's all good, and it's all like me. So whichever shows up is going to be cool, because I'm like still in such a delightful place that I'm not in a box anymore. And I don't have to wait to die to get out of the box. I mean, I guess you probably know, but you got to be there. If somebody's listening, you got to be there to understand what that feels like.
Yeah.
Because it's not bad. You're not saying anything is bad. Everything is fine. It's just not enough. Or it's not me,
Yep.
And I'm not better than anybody. I'm probably weirder than most, but it's just.
And it's possible there's something good, even better than what we've been experiencing now, and possibly even better than we've been imagining that's available. And, transformation happens instantaneously, and it's suddenly like, well, I was underemployed, and now suddenly I'm on a major market morning show, and that took a day.
I'm so sure it did.
10 years plus a day, and yeah, that's what it is.
Yeah.
Thank you to the folks who are joining us on New Thought Media Network. It is wonderful having you here on 11/11/1111. We'll be back for the Practical Podcast recording session again next Monday at 1 o'clock Eastern Time. Like I say, great to have you. Questions or comments, you put them in the chat. If you're watching online, then you can go to the website, BeTheLight.com, be-the-light.com, and we will respond to you from there. Thank you so much for being here. Carol, thank you as always.
See you.
Please help us say thank you to our organizational sponsors, including the Hefferland Foundation, Affiliated New Thought Network, International New Thought Alliance, Science of Mind Archives and Library Foundation, Center for Spiritual Living Denver, Center for Spiritual Living Midtown, New Thought Philadelphia, Planned Happiness Institute, Summit Center for Spiritual Living, One Heart Retreats, Center for Spiritual Living on the Lake, Unity Kitchener, Unity Spiritual Center Ottawa, Om Center for Spiritual Living, Satya Center, Begin Within Ministries, Center for Spiritual Living North Jersey, Unity of Savannah, and the Center for Spiritual Living Seattle, as well as all of our individual donors. Thank you for being part of the New Thought Media Network. Please like, share, and subscribe. New Thought Media Network, positively inspiring.